Well, the other way of accommodating differences is core values. Now, I do a lot of consulting work with different companies, one of which is Singapore Airlines. One of the most amazing things about Singapore Airlines is this. I've trained people who are the lowest rung and yet people right at the top. You know what I found about them? All of them are committed to the core values. And one of these core values that the whole organization understands is safety. They will never compromise on safety, no matter what it is. It is imbibed into the individual, into the department, into the culture of everybody. And so, whether he's an IT or EP, whether it is personality differences or whether there are different opinions and different cultural background, you know, there are all kinds of races working in Singapore Airlines. Now they're foreigners from China, from Myanmar, from Philippines, but all of them never compromise on safety. It is the core value of safety that will help them learn how to accommodate and work together. Now, one other thing about accommodation is this. You have to determine whether an issue is worth fighting for. You know, some people love to fight over everything. They love to fight where to eat, what to eat, how to eat. They drive you crazy. As a good manager and as a good staff, you have to understand, is this issue worth fighting for? And you have to determine. Because if you are fighting over everything, when the real fight comes, nobody is going to believe you. Another aspect has to do with adjusting your expectations. You see, habits and lifestyles are hard to change. We have to realize that some people are inherently messy, and you have to be realistic. Try to impose your style on somebody else. The fourth aspect of managing differences is to affirm. Now, most people, most organizations stop at level 3. They acknowledge, they accept, they accommodate. But I found that great organizations go beyond the 3rd level, the 3 levels. They begin to affirm. Affirming has to do with recognizing the worth of individuals and their contribution and learning to manage their weaknesses. You see, affirmation in Asia is counterculture. You know, because we tend to focus on what's not achieved. Another reason why we don't affirm is because we are less verbal and expressive. We are less verbal culture, unlike maybe the Europeans or the Caucasian or Americans. You know, they are very verbal. You know, they come to you and say, wow, fantastic, you are great, you are wonderful. But Asians, we are more inhibitive. And for example, you know, when our children do well in school, we don't say, well done, son. You know, we say, well, son, you are not there yet. We don't want people to think that we are so proud of ourselves. We have this sense of false modesty. But really, affirmation means the ability to recognize that people have their strength and going out there and say, yes, you have done well. And not only must you affirm performance, but you must affirm effort. I have seen many managers who have put a lot of pressure on their employees to work very hard, and somehow the project fails. You get disappointed. And then you go there and you just run the person down. He or she feels very discouraged because he has put so much effort and somehow, either not by his own fault or by other circumstantial factors, he did not accomplish what he wants. You need to affirm performance. You need to affirm the effort that people have put in. And of course, we need to affirm when they perform. I found that healthy relationships are characterized by positive stroke. That is what we call the pH factor, 5 to 1 relational principle. 5 positive moments versus 1 negative moment. And you can sustain that, that will be great. Great managers, Peter Drucker said, tend to build upon people's strength and make their weaknesses irrelevant. I like that. We must learn to focus on strength, what the person can do and what the person can achieve. I think that will be great. Finally, I want to talk about the last principle. It has to do with applaud. Applauding is the ability to share in the joy of success and sorrow of failure together. You see, we really need to learn how to enter into the joy of the person. In great companies, there's a lot of celebration. Applauding involves a few things. One, it involves lending your credibility to the person. In other words, you're willing to put your name, lend your name to the other person. You are willing to help people succeed. But today, we have people, colleagues, who want to bring you down. You see, they are jealous of your success. You are prepared to develop people to the fullest potential by coaching, by training. And one other thing about applauding is you refuse to allow negatives to hinder the growth. Great organizations, as I said, has a lot of celebration. But today, we see people becoming jealous of success, sabotaging other people's success, suppressing development, and rejoicing in people's failures. We need to change all that if we want to be a great organization. And sharing in failures is critical. And we need to come together when we fail so that we don't criticize, but come together and avoid that blame game. In this way, you will engender trust in times of failures. So, let's conclude. 5 principles of managing differences. Acknowledge, recognize constantly that we are different. Accept that there are strengths and weaknesses. Accommodate, learn to bend backward, learn to give and take. Affirm, learning to find the strength and the goodness in people and affirming them. And finally, applaud. When you see somebody succeed, can you enter fully into the joy and feel happy for the person? Or are you jealous? Thank you very much, and I hope that you can apply these principles in your workplace.
Alright, right now we open the session for question and answer. The first question is from Vincent Chiang, Singapore. Actually, he has 2 questions. First question is, assuming I am in middle management, being person-oriented may be welcomed by my fellow workers, but the management may see it as my weakness. What do you suggest?
So what you're saying is you're a person-oriented person, but your management sees it as a weakness. Well, the first thing is ask them to tune into this program and listen to this talk on the 5 A's. I mean, you're right. You see, a lot of people focus on what you cannot do or the weakness of your personality rather than the strength. It's a reality. So what you need to do, I suppose, is to is not to go back to their own game, play their game. If they focus on your weakness, you learn to focus on their strength. Learn to affirm them when they succeed. Perhaps by your perspective and change behavior, you may be able to change them. But even if they don't change, the question you need to ask yourself is, are these principles important? Will they help me? So, my suggestion is go out and lend this tape or ask him to go into this talk and maybe get them to listen to this. And the other thing is affirm their success. And thirdly, talk to them, talk to the person and explain your orientation and explain how you work as a person. I think that may help. One thing that I like to suggest too is, if you have a relation problem with your manager already, maybe talk over a cup of coffee. You know, informality helps. It's sometimes learning to explain yourself in a very informal way. I hope that has been helpful, Vincent. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So next question is from John from Indonesia. How do we further groom an employee who is very good in what he is doing but has very, very bad people handling skills?
Well, welcome, John from Indonesia. It's good to have you logged in from so far away. And let me have it straight. So your question is, this person is very good in what he does, but has very poor people management skill. Am I correct? Okay. Well, the first thing is, I would say, focus on his strength. Focus on what he can do. Okay. Secondly, you must create a culture of trust, whereby you can relate and talk to him one-on-one on his area of weakness. And I know in Indonesia it's very difficult because you tend to be very indirect in your conversation with your clients, or your employees. You don't want to hurt their feelings. I'm sure you can do it in your own Indonesian way, where you can talk about the issue. You know, let's say for example, he has a relation, he cannot manage people. Maybe bring out the issue of, oh look, there's some people who may not be able to get along with you. You know, maybe you tell me your perspective, what's going on here, and maybe help him understand where he's coming from, and maybe share with him some perspective about management and relationship. The third thing is, I find that people need a lot of coaching. We all have our blind spots, and we really need someone to come and tell us. And of course, how open you are to correction depends on how open you are to feedback. If you're open to feedback, then, and if you, let me just go back again. If you can create a climate in your department or organization where openness to feedback becomes a cultural value, then that will be great. And that means there's a lot of trust, and you don't blame people, you're trying to develop the person, not to find fault. Then people will be very open to talk about their weaknesses. So you need to create that environment. And when you are able to create that environment, then feedback becomes more acceptable. So focus on the strength, give training and coaching, talk about the issue rather than blame him for his personality type, and try to resolve the issue and ask him to give you his perspective, and you can give him or her the perspective of the situation. And perhaps in that process, you can help him understand that to be a great manager, you really need to manage and relate to people who are different from you.
Okay, next question from Vincent again. Do you agree that task-oriented managers get promoted faster in organizations that emphasize a lot on the bottom line?
Well, there is no generalized answer. I don't think we can say that if you're a bottom line driven organization, you promote the task-oriented people. Of course, there is a bias in certain way, and there's no study, so I cannot say whether that happens. But all I can say is that I've seen many bottom line driven organizations too that have who are prepared to look at both the professional competence and the managerial competence, as I mentioned, and promote people based on their competency. And as I said, as you move along in organization, people who are relational oriented become even more critical in organization. Unfortunately, there are also organizations that just promote based on the technical competence, and you find that a professionally, technically competent person may not be able to manage. That's why we have salespeople who are better doing sales than when you promote them to become sales manager, they fail, they flop, because they are very good in selling, they are not very good in managing. So we must have different tracks to help people develop their fullest potential. And if that salesperson who is very good at selling is willing to be open to be trained, to learn how to manage people, so much better. So to your question, Vincent, I don't know whether there is any study to suggest your proposition, but I don't know, unless you can tell me something different.
Next question is from Mike Tan from Malaysia. He says, these principles are great. How to tell my boss why he's not practicing any of them? He is highly task-oriented.
Well, again, Mike, thanks for logging in. Show him this video or ask him to log in to SkyQuest. You see, many people don't understand these principles of managing differences. I mean, all of us are blinded by our own success. And one of the things that I did not talk about is that, you know, successful people, they're found, are not really open for feedback, because they think that they are successful because of by their own strength. But unfortunately, they are not very open to feedback. So either you have to have someone who is close to him, whom he respects, that can come alongside and talk about the weaker side of his development. And that's why training is so important. That's why coaching is so important. So Mike, I suggest to you that again, like I said to the other question, the other person who asked me the question, focus on the strength and try to look at things from a different perspective. Are these principles helpful for you? If they are, apply it, and I think you will go a long way in your own career, and maybe you can become the manager who might be different from the one that you have.
Mike's second question is also, why do bosses, after attending a training seminar, still does not practice what they've learned?
Well, that's a very good question, Mike. And let me say that training does not solve the problem. I've been in training for many years, over 25 years. I have always said to my clients, training itself will not solve the problem. There are many factors. I mean, for one, you know, how do you change values that you hold in one training session? I mean, even the person goes for 2 days will never change the values. You know how long we take to develop values? A lifetime, right? So how do you expect training to do that? So training is only one of the many interventions. The second, more effective one probably could be coaching, you know, where someone can come alongside. And now coaching has become very important. The company that I work with, Meta HR Communication, we provide training as well as coaching program for managers to come alongside them and help them understand. And we've done some work in Malaysia on this, and it has changed. People need to have someone whom they trust to come alongside them and show them where they have succeeded, where they have gone wrong, and how they can improve, and show them exactly how to change. So training in itself will not solve the problem. You need coaching, and also a lot of us are influenced by the managers that we have, and leaders that we have play an important part. If a leader is willing to develop the potential of that person and sees and commit resources to helping the person develop the potential, you can see change. And the fourth aspect of change has to do with the organizational culture. And organizational culture, that promotes change, promotes learning, and a climate of trust where people can be open. So all these are important factors. So training is important, but it's not the only factor that will affect change in people's lives.
Okay, we have time for one last question from Teo from Hong Kong. John, you talk about competence and passion. Do you mean that you encourage people who are very unhappy in their jobs to change jobs?
Welcome. So glad to have you from Hong Kong. And Teo, whether to change job or not depends on many factors. You know, some people, they don't have passion, they stay in a job because why? The money is great. So they don't want to change job, right? If you're not happy and you really want to find fulfillment, then you need to have passion and competence in your work. So there are many factors whether I should encourage a person to change up, but I think it has to do with understanding yourself. What drives you? What makes you happy? What do you really want? I did not mention the other factor. It has to do with your values. You know, if you are driven, for example, simply by monetary factor, then you even though you have no passion, no competence, you love the money that you get, you stick there and they become dead wood in companies. But you have to put all these factors together. You need passion, you need competence, there must be values. And when all of these come together and synergize, then you really enjoy what you do, then you find fulfillment. So the question is fulfillment an important value to you? I mean, if you want to be fulfilled, then you have to start examining yourself. What drives you and what can you or not do, and understand your own limitation. And the other key is whether you're willing to learn. Even though you have passion, you have no competence, and I am willing to learn how to become better in what I do.